I am Lisa Snowden McCrae, the editor-in-chief of the Baltimore Beat and also executive producer at Real News Network. And this is the first in a series of interviews with candidates for Baltimore City Council president, based on data collected as part of the Blueprint for Baltimore survey. OSI Baltimore and community partners Baltimore Votes, Black Girls Vote, Black Leaders Organizing for Change, CASA, and No Brownies Coalition conducted the canvass and survey in the fall, asking more than 5,000 Baltimore residents to identify the priorities for city leadership, making this the largest issue-oriented survey in Baltimore's history. You can see the survey results at osibaltimore.org/blueprint.
Good morning. I am Kalila Harris. I, for this capacity, am the connection chairman for Alpha Kappa Alpha's Sci-Fi Omega chapter. OSI co-sponsors Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Sci-Fi Omega chapter serving East Baltimore, and the Junior League, along with the media sponsors WYPR and the Real News Network, plan to host a forum last week to pose these questions to City Council President candidates. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the forum was canceled. Instead, we will conduct interviews with each of the candidates individually and, using questions prepared for the forum, present this information to you. Lisa, YPR's Tom Hall and I were scheduled to moderate the forum. Unfortunately, Tom is not available to participate in today's interview, so we will ask his questions for him.
Okay, and today we're talking to City Councilwoman Shannon Sneed. Welcome, Shannon. We're going to ask questions related to 6 areas covered in the Blueprint survey. That'll be education and youth support, public safety and policing, housing, economic and community development, health, and civic participation. And before we start on the questions, Councilwoman, can you let us know how you're dealing with COVID-19 pandemic and any reflections on the city's response?
So I have a 3-year-old at home, and I also have a mother who came down to help me during this campaign season, who's in her 60s as well. She'll probably kill me for telling her exact age. And so I'm just being very cautious because I don't want to take any germs home to my family for them to get sick. So we've been trying to stay indoors other than having to run into the office or when my 3-year-old is like, I need some air because she starts jumping all over the place. And so we take her outside, take a walk around the neighborhood, get her some air. We've been calling on our constituents and checking on them in the 13th district, just seeing how they're doing, if they need anything. We've been doing a really good job, I think, of as community leaders and city officials working together, putting out advice, getting phone numbers to help other constituents, just taking what the governor has said seriously. And every time I'm on the phone with constituents, I'm like, listen, if we want to get through this quicker, we gotta keep our distance, take heed to this. But, it's unfortunate that, many people aren't working in Baltimore City. And but I say we're going to get through this. We'll be stronger. We'll be better. And it's just going to take all of us pitching in, helping each other out. So when I'm calling constituents and asking them what do they need, I'm being that liaison to say, hey, if I need to take you to the doctor's office or to get some medicine, I will do it. I've volunteered myself. I've actually done it. And so I think that's what we have to do as neighbors and as city officials. We just got to step in.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sneed. So with another hat on, I am Managing Director for K-12 Education Policy with the Center for American Progress. So let's dive into our first topic, which is education and youth support. City officials often state they don't have a role in public education because they don't control Baltimore City public schools. Answering only yes or no, do you believe school board commissioners should be confirmed by the City Council? And what other specific ways does city government play a role in making sure children have quality public schools?
So I'm going to push back and say we may not have a direct impact on what happens in city schools, but we have an impact through our policy. And so it kind of frustrates me whenever I hear people say, oh, it doesn't fall under us. It's like, no, we're living here in Baltimore City, so it's our students, it's our children. So it does impact and fall under us. And so that's why we have actually a committee dedicated to education where we actually get to bring officials in who are working for Baltimore Public Schools and ask them from anything to the budget on down to how many kids are in a classroom. I just think it's nonsense that people think us as city officials don't play a role. And listen, us as parents and residents in Baltimore City, we want all of our students to have a good education. I don't care what part of Baltimore City you live in, and we have a direct impact. So I feel like you don't have to have kids to be to make an impact on what's happening at our schools. You can volunteer, you can mentor a child, you can give money to fund some of their activities that's inside of school and outside of school. And so that's how I see it's all playing a part on how we make our students and our communities better. We take those current recommendations and we fund them as a city council. And that's been hard to see, I tell you, to be on the council. And each and every different administration, they say students are our priority. We care about students, but yet the budget doesn't reflect that. We have an impact on that. We can do something about that. And so that's when, like, as the next city council president, I'm truly going to make sure that we actually put the money behind our students, because that's the um, long-term decision when it comes to our students being better, our city being safer, our students having just everything that they need. If we invest in them in the front end and not the back end.
Thanks. So I want to get you on record. Do you think the city council should be confirming the members of the Board of School Commissioners?
I think we should have a conversation about it. I don't understand what would be the con of it. I see it as a pro. We confirm people now, or we vote against people who we don't think should be in those positions. So I would like to hear the other half of it, or why people say we should not. But we do have a say on what happens in Baltimore City. We may not get a vote down in Annapolis, but we have hearings right here in Baltimore City. And where some of us are right on the front line when it comes to rallying, when it comes to writing letters, when it comes to tutoring our students, we have an impact. And I don't think you have to be a teacher or an administrator to have an impact on a child in Baltimore City.
Thank you. So the blueprint for Baltimore overwhelmingly supports increased investments in our city's young people. Again, answering only yes or no, do you support the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund remaining outside of city government to preserve the vision of community members from across the city who work to set it up?
Say that one more time. How it's set up currently, are you basically asking me, should we keep the way that it is, where the money comes from ABC? It comes through us, but it goes to ABC to be distributed to different organizations. Is that the?
So let's remove ABC from the scenario, because they've noted that they won't be managing the fund, and they were only supposed to manage it on an interim basis. I'm talking more about the structure of it being outside of city government and not enveloped into existing systems or the larger bureaucracy of city government, but being external so that community members have final say, and there's a structure similar to BDC, if you will, that has an external component that is focused primarily on making sure grassroots organizations and organizations that perhaps didn't have an opportunity to get grant funds from your typical nonprofits or government agencies, now having this fund dedicated to them, and being supported and being good stewards of that money.
Yeah, I like the fact that many organizations, grassroots organizations, got the chance to get funding that they never had funding before. And so to me, that's major when this idea, because advocates said we need to do something like this, and this is before I even got into government, but I voted for it when it was on the ballot to make sure that, yeah, I support our youth. I want to see them get the money, and I want to see it happen on a grassroots level. And so to me, I think, yes, that was great. The idea behind it is absolutely something that we should support. And I think whenever you have the first to anything, you're going to have hiccups. And so it's just realizing with anything, hey, what do we do good? What do we do bad? What do we need to improve on to make sure that it's better streamlined? That's all. I just don't think there's a bad necessarily in what has happened. I just think they're all learning opportunities, because I have to say, some of the grassroots organizations in my neighborhood were funded where they didn't have the funding before, and they hired students right from our neighborhoods to do certain jobs during the summertime. And so from something as the sewing club, like we never had kids learning how to sew in our neighborhood, and having someone actually take a sabbatical from work to teach these students how to put this together, and etiquettes at a table. I mean, just business and learning how to do business, like that didn't happen in our community before on that low level of a woman just having an idea and wanting to put students to work in McGoldrick Park. So I want to see that more.
Great. I just want to put a fine point on this question, because some would say perhaps the fund should exist inside of city government. Are you supportive of the structure that was set up through an in-depth community process, meetings all across the city, where community members said this should not sit inside of city government?
I'm going to support the community. And this is Baltimore City. If the community says, let's have it come through other community members. Like, it was a range of young people in there to older people. I mean, it hit the gamut, I thought, when I read about it and when they came to City Hall to talk about it, that it was a range of people. And that's what you want. You want people of all ages, of all races, being involved in something that affects kids and community. So I'm okay with the way that it is. Again, I just think that anything new, you're going to have hiccups. And so we just have to do that SWOT analysis to see what we need to improve on, what areas to make it even better. But I don't think you throw everything out. As they say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is definitely something that impacted some of the students in my district and across Baltimore City. And so when you think about the good that it's done, I think we have to keep it. Ultimately, it's up to the people. If the people say put it back in city government, I guess it's worth a try. But let's give people an opportunity to do the right thing, to learn from their mistakes and go to work it out. Because the people working behind the scenes on this, I think they were trying. And some of these people were working for free when they weren't even getting paid. And that just shows the resilience of Baltimore City and how our people are. When we have a mission to get done, you don't have to pay me or not. I believe in our students and I believe in this, so I'm going to work to get it done. And talk to any of them and they'll tell you that.
Thank you. I want to pivot just a little bit. Some argue that the money the city spends on policing should and could actually be rerouted to education and other youth services. What's your take on that?
I think so. Listen, we have a $1 billion budget in Baltimore City, and then we spend $1 million somewhere. I think in our 2020 budget, we spent somewhere like $530 million on just police. And our results hasn't been different. Like, when you talk about, this is the first time where overtime probably won't be as outrageous as it has been in the past, but we've been spending a lot of money on Baltimore City Police. And so I just think we haven't gotten different results. And so here's the opportunity again, through the current recommendations, to do something totally different where we don't have to invest $530 million into police. Imagine what we can do if we invested that into our students on the front end. And that's what I talk about, on the front end. And that's why I'm like, I'm the one beforehand as a city councilwoman that has been fighting for our students, that has been putting in policies that make a difference in our communities in Baltimore City. It's not because I've decided to run for city council. I'm like, look at my record. When you look at my record, anybody that's in this race, I have put in legislation that will clearly help the residents of Baltimore City when we talk about policy. I'm the one who voted to increase minimum wage. When people are making more money in communities that look like mine in Elwood Park, across Baltimore City, guess what? You'll spend more money in your community that's supporting small businesses. You'll have more money to support your children and get them the resources that they need. That's all with more money. More money. When I talk about taking away policies or blocking policies that harm our communities for Black and brown people, I voted against mandatory minimums. So it's like I've been trying to get policies out there that make a difference in Baltimore City, residential requirements, making sure that our top city officials live in Baltimore City. At the time, our council president said, Shannon, I tried that. It's not going to work. You're not going to get it through. I went to Annapolis to make sure that I got this bill passed, got the enabling legislation, brought it back home, got my colleagues to agree with me to get it passed to make sure not only does the mayor's cabinet live here, but directors live here, and anyone who reports to directors live here. And those some of our top salaries in Baltimore City. And now they have to live here. When you talk about paying taxes, that's them. When you talk about making our schools better, all schools in Baltimore City, imagine if our top officials in all of Baltimore City lived in Baltimore City, how good our schools would be.
So I want to just pivot us back to education more squarely. Will you share 2 policy proposals that you would set forth as City Council President and guide City Council towards passing directly affecting education?
The budget is the number one thing. The budget has to be it, and it's the budget supporting the current recommendations. That's the number one thing. And the second thing is our trauma response care. That's something that we already have on the books. We have policies on the books, but we have to make sure that we're enforcing them and getting everything that we need from them. Those are the 2 policies that directly will have an impact on our students and making sure they have better outcomes in Baltimore City. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to use the policies that we have in play that I voted for as a city councilwoman.
Thank you, Councilman Sneed. Councilwoman Sneed, excuse me. Let me be clear.
So wrong.
Okay, so next up is public safety and policing, and I'm going to be doing some questions that were submitted by WYPR's Tom Hall. 32% of residents to the survey support expanding safe streets. The city has other violence interrupting programs like ROCA. ROCA is now funded in large measure by philanthropy, as are several smaller organizations like HOPE, or Helping Oppressed People Excel. Does the city council president have a role in coordinating the efforts of those different groups?
Again, yes. We do as city council president, because again, it comes back to funding. We know the results on the safe streets. In 2017, I think it was my colleagues and I, we were the only council who stood together to stop the mayor's budget to say, if you don't fully fund safe streets, we are not going to pass any of this other stuff. We all stuck together on that, and that made a difference, that to show that we are not playing. We hear the residents when they talk about crime. We want to do something about it, because people are like, now, do something about it now. And so the now is to make sure that we have community people a part of making our streets safe, that you're interrupting when you hear about beefs that's happened in the community. You're employing people in the community so they can take care of their families, and you're making us all safer. I'm like, that makes a difference. Even for my gag order bill, it's not having more police officers. It's making sure that we have community policing, that we have police officers living in our communities, that we set up something.
Okay, Shannon, I know we've had a little bit of technical difficulties, and when we were last talking, we were talking a little bit about community safety and policing. I'm going to go on to our housing questions right now, which I submitted. In 2016, Baltimore residents voted to create a $20 million affordable housing trust fund, funded partially by revenues from taxes on real estate transactions. Citywide, Blueprint participants thought that money should go to reusing vacant buildings for affordable housing. What do you think that money should go to?
I think it should go to helping get to redoing some of our vacant homes, because it's just a blight on some of our communities. And so that way we're putting people to work if we are actually working on bringing back some of those vacant homes in our community. And it's just bringing back communities when you think about it. And so that's how I see it. I see no problem, or I see no argument when it comes to bringing back our communities and starting in our communities that have the most blight. Why not? And that when you look at it that way, when you look at it through an equity lens, you're not even going to be just in East and West Baltimore. There are some parts of South Baltimore that totally need to be redone that look like parts of East and West Baltimore. So that's how I don't think I would get any pushback from that.
Okay. Residents to the survey also expressed enthusiasm for the idea of supporting nonprofits that provide affordable home ownership. Do you agree that this is important, and do you have a plan for supporting these groups?
So if you actually look at areas like McAldrey Park, they have Charm City Land Trust, and they did a little bit of it too. It's just taking them longer because they don't have the money necessarily to make quick turnarounds. But this is in a way that it has, you put the equity back in the neighborhood, the equity actually stays on the land, and it becomes affordable. And so when you look at areas like McAldrey Park or Bel Air Edison, Bel Air Edison used to have somewhere between, I want to say, 80 something home ownership, and they don't have that anymore. It's fallen to like 43. And so that's affordable homes that are pretty, they're not huge homes. They're pretty like livable for your first time home family. And so we can take that, what they had done back in the day, and do that in areas that really needed, like McAldrey Park that attached to a main street. Again, here it is, people, community, you're growing it right from a neighborhood perspective. You're not only growing the neighborhoods, you're growing the small businesses, you're putting people to work. It's a whole ecosystem connected to it. Dr. C. Meyer, I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with her, and she talks about it all the time, how we bring communities back. And that's making sure that we actually get people buying, living in homes, taking ownerships in their community, having less vacant homes. It's right there. You bring back a community, you bring back the people, you invest in the neighborhoods. It's just a cycle of doing better.
All right, thank you. Final question for this. The current COVID-19 crisis that we're going through has really exposed how important it is to protect the people in the city who are experiencing life without housing, because they can be more vulnerable to getting it and spreading it. How do you have a plan for helping these people get out of the situation that they're in, and what is it?
So I think the governor has already said it. We want to keep people in their homes. We don't want anybody a landlord. And we have gotten emails as city leaders where people are saying that I can't believe you're saying that you don't want people to pay their mortgage and you don't want people to pay their rent. I'm like, the bigger crisis is, the biggest issue is that we want people who are in homes to stay in homes so they won't get other people sick. And if there's a way to make sure even our homeless population, to get them help so they won't even have to worry about passing the disease and dying from it, because they don't have either housing or health insurance. Like, we want to protect everybody. And so when we protect our lowest of the low, that means we can also protect our high people as well, who are essentially not affected by this. But I don't think anybody is not being affected by this. And so therefore, we got to do everything we can do as city officials and just everyday people to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and looking out for our neighbors and people in general, to protect them, to be safe. It's health.
once this crisis has passed, are you still going to have that emphasis on protecting people that are experiencing life without homes?
I've been I've been an advocate already as city councilwoman, and so we got to protect. Lisa, when we take care of the lowest of the low of our community, when we make sure those people that don't have jobs, that don't have access to food, that don't have health care to treat mental illness, then we're not taking care of our people. So no, that's why I'm like, every policy that I put in place really affects the people that, to me, are Baltimore City, that are American. There are so many people that are considered the working poor, that they work just enough hours not to even have health care. They work just enough hours that one paycheck missed can totally put them in a poorhouse. There are so many people working 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And right now they have 0 jobs, because those are a lot of times our hourly workers, our hourly earners who work in hotels. Our hotels have been shut down. My husband is a hotel worker. He's going to be affected by it. Just people who work in restaurants and our servers, everyone is affected by this. And so the policies that I supported in the past are the same policies that I'm going to support as city council president. And that's what we need. Someone who is about the people, who's putting policies, again, that makes Baltimore City better, not because this position became open, but because they've been doing the work all along. And I've been doing the work all along as a city councilwoman, and I'll continue to do the work as city council president. I truly believe in Maya Angelou's line. When a person tells you who they are, believe them. I have a record. We all have records. So go back and look for our records and see what we have been doing before we decided to run for city council president.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sneed. We're going to pivot now to economic and community development. Would you support a universal basic income for at least the 35% of residents with the lowest incomes, or who are living at 150% of the regional poverty level?
That goes back to absolutely, when you take care of the bottom, when you take care of the people who are struggling the most, to absolutely make sure that, hey, when you are struggling to pay your bills and working 2 and 3 jobs, that means you're not at home with your children, that you're not making sure that maybe homework is being done because you're so concerned about just taking care of the day-to-day bills, to keep the lights on, to keep groceries in the refrigerator. But when we think about it, how can we make it better? It's all about, to me, it's policies. And if those policies show that, hey, everyone will benefit, I don't see why we would not.
Okay, thank you. How would you expand the footprint of investment into communities that have been historically blocked from opportunity, ensuring legacy residents are not displaced or excluded from new amenities, and increasing property values? So in other words, how would you stave off the implications of gentrification as we see it around the country, where as communities are developed, the people who have invested in those communities for decades are pushed out and off to the side?
And so it's enough research now, just based on even EBDI, which happened in Baltimore City. They will never go back and do it the way that they did it, how they did it in the past, because of that effect. So now we have enough data, we have enough research to show how you can do it, where everyday citizens, everyday working people will not be moved out of their communities. But we all deserve safe communities. Let me just say that. Let's be clear about that. No matter what neighborhood you live in, everyone deserves it. And that's the top thing when people say, what is your concern? I want a safe community. I want to make sure that my children are safe. I'm a senior. I want to make sure that I'm safe. And so when you look at it through the lens of equity, it's easy. To me, it's an easier thing. Stop investing money in the white L when we have so much to take care in the butterfly, right? And we call it the black butterfly. So I think that's, when you look at it through an equity lens of that way, it's easier to make the decisions, because those are, again, the areas that are in need.
Would you continue to support, or would you support pilots and TIFs continuing to be a structure used to allow for large corporations to not pay taxes over a long period of time, despite having ownership over the largest landmass?
So no, so even when it comes to that, if they paid 120, I think it's 120 million a year, do you know what we could do with 120 million if everyone just paid their fair share? But again, it's federal. But as a city councilwoman, I would love for everyone to pay their fair share. We could fund the Kerwin recommendations, and then have some money left over to do housing, is how I look at it, and to fund and youth opportunities all year round for our young people to have jobs, to set them up for 21st century careers. I would be in support of everybody paying their fair share. I don't think anybody would be against it, but we don't control. That's something that we don't control as city council. Even when we had the discussion at the hearings, we all said, I think, that we would come out of there and like, we want people to pay their fair share. We want organizations to pay their fair share. We just don't have.
Council does have a say in who receives a pilot or a tip.
Yes, yes, yes. And so when it comes to that, absolutely. But we want it to be in the neighborhoods that have not been getting them in the past. And so that's the importance of it when you look through it through an equity lens of people who already have gotten it in neighborhoods that just don't get them at all.
Great. So one last question, would you support free public transportation for all residents living at or under 150% of the regional poverty level? And what other transportation changes would you make or advocate for to improve access to job opportunities?
So it's funny that you say that, because I always say across the board that we should have a free, actually, bus system or transit system right now, because right now it's not serving everyone. I say the Charm City circulator doesn't come to East Baltimore, and it doesn't go to parts of West Baltimore or South Baltimore. And so since it doesn't come to those areas, let's make it be free so we can, and then not reduce services. So here's something else I would like to see different on top of that. A lot of the universities have their own transit system where they're picking up people, and it's like, it's redundant. It goes through downtown and City Hall. What about putting some of those extra buses in East Baltimore and West Baltimore? If we like come together and actually put our resources together and think about which areas are not being served, the whole entire Baltimore city would be served. So those are the two things that I would do differently, is make all the institutions come to the table, and this is how we're going to fund taking care of people outside of downtown and the university, but control the whole Baltimore city. And when you think about it that way, that means people can get to work on time because there are plenty of resources. They can get to our ports. That's very important, where a lot of our jobs are down there as well, but a lot of people don't have access to get down there. And those are good jobs. I'm not talking about pennies. Those are actually jobs with benefits, but they can't make it down there on time. If you live in West Baltimore, if you live in South Baltimore, to get over to Southeast Baltimore to get to the port, you have to be there on time. You have to be to that boat on time. And that's the number one hindrance, is transportation for people who don't have their own private car. And it doesn't make sense to invest in more vehicles and cars. It doesn't. We know the facts behind it.
Thank you.
And now some health questions. Respondents to the Blueprint survey said that if more money were allocated to mental health, trauma, and substance abuse services, the government should make treatment for those things more affordable. As City Council President, how would you advocate for that?
Yes, here we go again, pulling on our institutions here that are here right in Baltimore. So when you think about Hopkins, that is in East Baltimore, where they brag about having thousands of people come through each day from all over the world, well, we can't make it accessible for even the people that live in Baltimore City to come in and get treatment for mental health, to come in and get treatment for addiction. It all should happen at some of our institutions. University of Maryland over there in West Baltimore, the same kind of scenario. It's how we make it happen. We bring everyone in the room, because we know when we have these experts in the room that certain things can happen. And when you have the right idea and people working towards it, we can do it. We already know what people need. We've taken plenty of surveys at this point. We've done oh gosh, We have the data to know what people want. We filled out all the forms. Now it's at this point that we have to invest in our people, and this is what they're asking for and what they need. So why shouldn't we do it? If it becomes a better Baltimore, it will be so worth it in the long run.
Okay, last health question. Do you think there's a tie between mental and physical health of the city and the pervasive problem of crime?
Ask that again, Lisa. Let me make sure I have it, because what are you basically saying?
Do you think that there's a tie between the mental and physical health of people in the city and the pervasive problem of crime that we're experiencing?
So I think there's root issues, I guess, is what we've been saying all along. And so if you don't have if you don't have an education and you can't read, and then if you can't read and you can't work the internet to fill out a job, and then you think your only way of surviving is actually stealing and killing, that's not it. And so that's why I'm like, some of this is root cause issue and some of it can be reached early on. And so that's how I look at it. But if you are essentially murdering and killing, that's a whole different scope. And so that's someone that needs to be taken off the street right away to me. You cannot have people just out murdering, killing and shooting, and then life goes on as normal, because that's not normal. So you still have to get to, again, why is this happening? Why are you doing this? What can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Which services need to be provided? And so I think to prevent that, to make sure that it doesn't happen, is why I say that we got to invest in our students. We got to make sure that there are better outcomes early on. And that's the point of funding the Carwin recommendations, right? Because you don't find this stuff out at 16. You find out what the home is like at 3 when they enter school. And so that will make a difference. If you know a child is affected by lead paint, you'll know that hey, grandmom is actually, the grandparents are raising you versus a mom or a dad. Like, you know, the background of what's happening in a child's life to better equip this child of what they need, what resources are lacking. And so in the past, it may not have come from government, but we have to help now because we know the results.
All right, thanks again, Councilwoman Sneed. We're going to close out with some of Tom Hall's questions that he submitted to us. These questions are on civic participation. 80% of white voters said that they have been involved in informing the budget process. Less than 60% of African Americans, 40% of Latinos. How would you increase engagement in the political process among people of color who have long been marginalized in Baltimore's power centers?
I'll start out with what I did as a councilwoman, because I know that the constituents in the 13th district, which was one of the reasons why I ran, that we felt like we did not see our council person. We couldn't see where he was voting for policies that would impact our lives in a better way. We didn't even see him when it was time to have conversations or wanted to meet up with him. And so I made sure that when I became a city councilwoman, that one, I would be a full-time councilwoman, that I wouldn't have any other job. So that way, when people would call my office, that I could actually meet with them wherever they wanted to meet, if it was on a corner of their block or at Northeast Market or on Bel Air Road, or to do walks through the community, or to meet at the library, or if they wanted to come to City Hall because it's the people's building. And so as a full-time councilwoman, I was able to do that, to first know that, hey, when you call, there's going to be someone answering in my office. Either it's me or it's going to be someone that's working in their office. And so that's the one thing that you get, that they know that they have someone working on behalf of them. And then on top of that, I made sure that I went to all community meetings. I'm like, if there's a community meeting, and I don't care if it's 2 people there, I'm going to be there because it's important to me, so they can know what I've been working on, and so I can hear from them and I can stay connected to the community. And so that to me made an impact of what legislation I put in, why it was important for me to put it in, because it was directly impacting the people in the Baltimore city. And so we're not the only ones that would be having these issues. It would happen all over in Baltimore City. That's why we put in the displaced workers bill. When I found out that, a lot of Baltimore City contracts, people work for contracts are not working directly for Baltimore City, could lose their job when we knew the contract would be ending. At least we could do is give people 90 days. Before then, people did not have 90 days to get their house in order. And when I say get their house in order, it takes 6 months to a year to find a new job. But a contractor could come in and 2 weeks out, you're out. It just seems so unfair if we're supposed to say, these are residents that live in Baltimore City. These are not high paid workers. These are your janitor, food service workers, security guards. Like, they're everyday people living paycheck to paycheck. And the least I could do is put in a bill that would at least allow 90 days. I'm not telling you who to hire or who to fire. I'm just saying, let's give Baltimore City residents the respect they deserve, to give them enough time to get their house in order. And so to me, when you have someone like me working on your behalf, coming to community meetings, and then I also print out newsletters. I would actually print out newsletters for the people that are not on social media. Those are some of our seniors, just some of our people that work every single day. And whether you voted for me or not, I'm putting this information in your door to let you know what I've been working on. And that's the type of government that I'm going to make sure that I'm running as Baltimore City Council president. I'm going to be in the communities. I'm going to make sure that we have enough staff to go out to different events to talk about what I'm doing. Because listen, I can't be everywhere at one time, but what I can do is make sure that we are getting information out in different ways. And I think that's one way that we do it, via social media, print, mail. We just got to think outside the box of how we get our message out. And I think I've done a great job as a city councilwoman to say, whether you agree with me or not, but this is what I've been working on. This is what I've been doing. And if anytime you want to talk to me about it, here's my number, here's my email, and I'll respond.
One last question for you. Something that is constantly a sticking point among residents in Baltimore City is the Board of Estimates. Would you support a charter amendment that would reduce the Board of Estimates from 5 to 3 people? And if not, how would you modify the Board of Estimates so that it is a balanced committee that is able to make sure that there are ethics in our contracting and that everybody has access to working with Baltimore City?
Yeah, so a good example of, yes, I think we need to modify the Board of Estimates, but you kind of asked 2 questions there. So the first question is taking the panel down to a 3-member board, which would be the mayor, the city council president, and the comptroller. And I say yes, because right now the mayor has 2 votes up there, and they never vote against the mayor. They've never voted against the mayor that I can think of. And so therefore, it's no point if you're just going to have someone up there voting for the mayor anyway. So bring it down to a 3-member board. Some other charter amendments I'm not in agreement with, but since you just asked about that specific one, yes. Another example of, again, contracts and stopping business as usual, stop the status quo and getting a pass. A good example of that would be recently, you have a member of Baltimore City, a resident of Baltimore City, who was trying to get a contract for landscaping. And they were like, oh, no, they can't do the job. They don't know how to cut down trees and they don't know how to clean up. But it was like, come on, like, if we don't make sure that we are giving contracts out to people in Baltimore City or allowing them to at least work on the job, then how can we ever expect anything to change in Baltimore City? And I'm not talking about, this is not rocket science. It was literally cutting down trees and cutting grass. We couldn't give young people this opportunity to do that, or people in general to do that. I've asked at a budget meeting not too long ago, last budget season, because in my community, we were getting grants for people to clean up our neighborhoods. that's an easy way to do something right away to make a difference in our communities. One, people were getting paid. One, the other one was streets were being cleaned. Like, that's easy. And you see the impact and the difference right away. When a street is filthy, dirty, it just doesn't feel good. But I'm telling you, once you get someone out there and clean it up, the look of a block looks totally different. It transitions the feel in the neighborhood when it's clean. And so that's a quick way to get people to work. And it will grow into something else too as well. It's just a stepping stone, I feel like, for whoever wants to do it. And you can go so many places from there. It's just a start.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman Sneed. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, Tom Hall, who wasn't able to join us again, and we appreciate the support of Open Society Institute. Any final comment?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. This was fun. It took my mind off of some what's going on right now of being cooped up in the house, but it's really important for people to know that, listen, I've been working as a city councilwoman very hard for the constituents of District 13, and my record shows that. And so if you ask anyone, the one thing they will never take away from me is that I'm a hard worker, that I listen to everyone to get their opinion, and I'm just really thoughtful on what I do and what the impact will be long term. And that's the reason why I have so many. I'm the only one who has the majority of the support from my colleagues, and that says a lot. And so I have the majority of the support from my council colleagues, some of our our elected leaders on the state level as well. I've gotten endorsements from regular people like that live in our communities, from 1199 and the Carpenters Union and the Sierra Club. And so when you talk about the support across the board, I've gotten that support because I've worked so hard as a city councilwoman. And that's what we want. We want someone that will hear us all and give everyone a fair chance and a fair shake. And that's what we deserve as Baltimore City. We definitely want somebody that's going to make a difference today. And so I thank you for the opportunity to let me say that.
Thank you again. Be safe.
You too.